My brother fired me from our family business. A month later, his company went bankrupt because of my move. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. The day Marcus fired me, I sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the building that had been my second home for 15 years. The gold letters spelling Henderson Associates Marketing Solutions gleamed in the afternoon sun, mocking me. I'd helped design that logo when I was 22, fresh out of college and bursting with ideas that nobody wanted to hear. Take some time to think about what you really want, Marcus had said, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. Maybe this business isn't the right fit for you anymore. The right fit. As if I hadn't been the one pulling 60-hour weeks while he played golf with clients. As if I hadn't been the one who'd saved us from bankruptcy 3 times in the past decade while he took credit for every breakthrough. As if I hadn't been the one who'd actually built the relationships that kept this company afloat. But I didn't say any of that. I just nodded, packed my things into a cardboard box, and walked out with whatever dignity I could salvage. Now, sitting in my Honda Civic, not the BMW Marcus drove, courtesy of the company, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Pure, unexpected relief. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Sarah Chen's number. Sarah, who'd been our biggest client until Marcus decided her budget was too small to justify the attention. Sarah, who'd built a multi-million-dollar e-commerce empire and had been practically begging us to expand our services for her growing network of partners. She answered on the second ring. Alex? Honey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. That campaign you designed for my spring launch is still pulling incredible numbers. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. I took a deep breath. If I told you I was starting my own marketing firm, would you consider working with me? The silence stretched for maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an hour. Alex, I've been waiting for this call for 2 years. The fight started over the Meridian Industries proposal, but really it had been building for months, maybe years, maybe my entire life. I'd been up until 3 a.m. perfecting the presentation, diving deep into Meridian's customer data, identifying opportunities that our competitors had missed. It was the kind of work I lived for, taking raw information and transforming it into a story that would revolutionize how they reached their market. Marcus strolled in at 10 a.m., his hair still damp from his morning workout, carrying his usual green smoothie and that easy confidence that had always made everyone in the room lean in a little closer. How's the Meridian thing coming along? He asked, settling into the chair across from my desk like he owned the place. Which, technically, he did. Finished. I sent it to you at 3:17 a.m. I gestured toward my computer screen, where I had 3 different versions of the proposal open, each one tailored to different budget scenarios. I found something interesting in their Q3 data that I think could completely change their approach to the millennial market. Marcus nodded absently, already pulling out his phone. Great. Listen, I'm going to need you to walk me through the key points before the meeting. You know how I like to have everything locked down. Walk him through the key points, like always, so he could present my work as if it had sprung fully formed from his brilliant mind, while I sat in the corner taking notes and being introduced as my brother who handles the technical stuff. Actually, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice, I was thinking I should present this one. I know the data inside and out, and I've got some specific recommendations about their social media integration that require... Alex. Marcus set down his smoothie and gave me that look. The one that said I was being unreasonable, that I was overstepping, that I should know my place by now. We've talked about this. you're brilliant with the analytical side, but presentation isn't really your strength. Remember what happened with the Morrison account? The Morrison account, where I'd stumbled over one word, in a 40-minute presentation that had ultimately landed us a 6-figure contract. He'd been bringing it up ever since. That was 2 years ago, Marcus. And it cost us nearly losing them as a client. He stood up, straightening his tie with the casual authority of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. Look, I know you put a lot of work into this, and it shows. But Meridian is huge. This could set us up for the next 5 years. We can't afford any hiccups. I stared at him. This man who shared my DNA but might as well have been from another planet. We looked similar enough. Same dark hair, same hazel eyes, same square jaw inherited from Dad. But where I'd always been the quiet one, the one who preferred books to parties and data to small talk, Marcus had gotten all the charm, all the effortless charisma that made people want to follow him. He'd also gotten Dad's approval, Mom's pride, and the automatic assumption from everyone in our family that he was the business one, while I was just the smart one. As if intelligence was some cute party trick rather than the foundation that held everything together. Fine, I said, but I want to be there for the technical questions. Of course, you always are. He flashed that $1 million smile and headed toward the door. Oh, and can you have Janet reschedule my 2 p.m.? I promised Claire I'd take her to that new place downtown for lunch. Claire, his wife of 3 years, who'd never worked a day in her life but somehow always had opinions about how we should be running the company. The woman who'd once suggested we should make the website more pink because it would appeal to women better. I watched him leave, then turned back to my computer screen, where months of research and analysis glowed back at me in neat charts and bullet points. All the work I'd done, all the insights I'd uncovered, all the strategies I'd developed, it would all be filtered through Marcus, polished with his presentation skills, and delivered with his natural confidence. And everyone would walk away thinking Marcus Henderson was some kind of marketing genius. The Meridian meeting went exactly as I'd expected. Marcus was smooth, charming, and completely in command of the room. He delivered my insights like they were his own personal revelations, pausing at just the right moments for effect, making eye contact with each of the 5 executives in turn. I sat at the far end of the conference table, my laptop open, ready to field any technical questions. But Marcus handled even those with surprising competence, because I'd spent 3 hours the night before walking him through every possible scenario. The social media integration Alex developed is particularly innovative, Marcus said at one point, and I felt that familiar flutter of recognition mixed with frustration. At least he'd mentioned my name. Meridian's CEO, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s named Patricia Vance, leaned forward. I'd love to hear more about the implementation timeline. How quickly could we see results? This was my cue. I'd prepared a detailed breakdown of the rollout process, complete with projected metrics and adjustment protocols. But Marcus was already answering. We could have Phase 1 active within 6 weeks, with measurable improvements in engagement by month 3. The beauty of this approach is its scalability. We can adjust the parameters in real time based on performance data. He was parroting my words perfectly, but something in his tone made it sound less precise than it actually was. Patricia's expression shifted slightly, not quite skeptical, but not entirely convinced either. And the budget flexibility? Asked their CFO. Our Q4 projections are tight. Now I had to speak up. This was the part where my 3 different proposal versions came into play, and Marcus didn't have the details memorized. We've actually developed 3 different implementation strategies, I said, and felt the room's attention shift to me. The first is our full service approach, which maximizes impact but requires the largest investment. The second focuses on the highest ROI channels first, letting us prove value before expanding. And the third is a pilot program that lets you test our methodology on a smaller scale. I pulled up the comparison charts I'd prepared, walking them through the cost-benefit analysis of each option. As I talked, I could see Patricia's interest sharpening. She asked follow-up questions, dug into the details, challenged my assumptions in exactly the way I'd hoped she would. For 15 minutes, I felt like I was really presenting my work, not just supporting Marcus's performance of it. Then Marcus smoothly took back control. As you can see, we're completely committed to finding the right fit for Meridian's needs. Flexibility and results. That's what Henderson Associates is all about. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises to follow up within the week. Walking back to the office, Marcus was practically bouncing. Did you see Vance's face when I explained the implementation timeline? She was sold. This is going to be huge, Alex, huge. When he said, I explained, something inside me finally snapped. You mean when I explained it? Marcus stopped walking. We were in the middle of the sidewalk. Downtown lunch crowd flowing around us like we were rocks in a stream. What? The implementation timeline, the budget flexibility, the 3 different strategies. I explained all of that. He stared at me for a moment, then laughed. Alex, come on. We're a team. What's mine is yours, what's yours is mine. That's how family businesses work. Is it? Because it seems like what's mine becomes yours, but what's yours stays yours. The laugh faded from his face. What's that supposed to mean? I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue, all the moments I'd swallowed my frustration and told myself it was for the good of the company, for the good of the family. Nothing, I said. Forget it. But I couldn't forget it. And 3 weeks later, when the Meridian contract fell through because Marcus had fumbled a follow-up call trying to negotiate terms he didn't understand, I was the one who got blamed. Alex, you need to understand something about this business, Dad had said, his voice carrying that patient tone he used when he thought he was about to impart crucial wisdom. People don't buy from companies. They buy from people they like and trust. We were in his study, the same room where he'd taught Marcus and me to play chess, where he'd helped us with homework, where he'd eventually handed over the reins of Henderson Associates when his arthritis made the daily grind too painful. I know that, Dad. That's why I've been focusing so much on relationship building with our existing clients. The retention rates, that's not what I mean. He leaned back in his leather chair, the one that had seemed enormous when I was 7 but now looked small beneath his shrinking frame. I mean, the face of the company. The person who walks into a room and makes people think, these are the folks I want to work with. I knew where this was going, but I let him continue. Marcus has that gift. He always has. Even as a kid, he could charm his way out of trouble, make friends with anyone, get people excited about whatever crazy scheme he'd cooked up. Dad smiled, lost in some memory of Marcus at 8 years old, probably convincing the neighbor kids to trade their lunch money for the privilege of mowing his lawn. I have gifts too, I said quietly. Of course you do. My God, Alex, you're twice as smart as anyone in this family. You see patterns nobody else sees. You solve problems before most people even realize they exist. But that's not enough in this business. Not enough. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd heard variations of them my entire life. Not enough charm, not enough confidence, not enough of whatever magical quality made people want to follow Marcus wherever he decided to go. What I'm trying to say, Dad continued, oblivious to the way I'd gone completely still, is that you and Marcus make a perfect team. He's the face, you're the brains. He brings them in. You make sure they stay. It's a beautiful partnership. A beautiful partnership. Where one partner got the credit, the recognition, the respect, and the other partner got to be grateful for the opportunity to work behind the scenes. But what if I want to be more than just the brains? I asked. Dad looked genuinely surprised, like the question had never occurred to him. Why would you want that? You're already the best at what you do. What I did. Data analysis, strategy development, problem solving. All the invisible work that happened before Marcus walked into a room and made it look effortless. I just think maybe sometimes I could... Alex. Dad's voice went firm, not unkind, but brooking no argument. I built this company from nothing. I know what it takes to succeed. Marcus is a natural leader. You're a natural supporter. There's no shame in that. No shame. Just a lifetime of being second place in a two-person race. I left that conversation understanding exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. Marcus was the heir apparent, the golden boy, the one who would carry the Henderson name forward into the next generation. I was the supporting cast, the loyal lieutenant, the one who would make sure Marcus didn't screw it all up. And for 2 more years, I played that role perfectly. We need to talk. Marcus's voice on the intercom had that edge to it that meant trouble. I saved the client report I'd been working on and walked down the hall to his corner office, the one that used to be Dad's, complete with the mahogany desk and the wall of awards I'd helped earn. He was standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot with his hands clasped behind his back. Power pose. He'd learned it from some leadership seminar Claire had made him attend. "Close the door," he said, without turning around. I closed it and took a seat in one of the client chairs facing his desk. The same chairs where I'd sit during our weekly check-ins, giving him updates on projects he barely understood and listening to him complain about difficult clients whose problems I'd somehow have to solve. "The Meridian thing was a disaster," he said, still facing the window. "I know. I told you the pricing structure was too aggressive for their current budget constraints. You told me a lot of things." He turned around, and I was surprised to see something that looked almost like anger in his eyes. "You've been telling me a lot of things lately." I waited for him to continue, but he just stared at me, like he was expecting me to apologize or explain, or somehow make this easier for him. "Marcus, what's this about?" He sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking older than his 34 years. "Mom thinks you're unhappy here." Mom, who barely understood what we did but had strong opinions about family loyalty and keeping the peace. "Did she also tell you why I might be unhappy?" "Alex, I've been thinking about this for weeks, maybe months, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk, trying to look serious and thoughtful. "Maybe you've outgrown this place." Outgrown. Like I was a teenager who'd gotten too big for his childhood bedroom. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time for you to spread your wings. Go out on your own. Find something that really challenges you." The words hung in the air between us, and I felt something shift inside my chest. A door closing, maybe, or opening. I couldn't tell which. "Are you firing me?" "I'm giving you an opportunity to pursue your own path." "That's firing me." Marcus sighed, running his hands through his hair. "Alex, you've been miserable here for months. Don't tell me you haven't, because I can see it. You question every decision I make. You barely hide your frustration during meetings, and half the time, I feel like you think you could do my job better than I can. I do think that." The words came out before I could stop them, and Marcus's face went completely blank. "Excuse me?" I could have taken it back, apologized, explained that I was just frustrated and didn't mean it. But sitting there in his office, looking at his shocked expression, I realized I was tired of pretending. I said, "I do think I could do your job better than you can. I think I've been doing half of it already for the past 5 years. Marcus stood up so fast, his chair rolled backward and hit the bookshelf. "Are you serious right now? After everything this family has given you? After Dad built this company specifically so we'd both have something? Dad built this company for you. I just happened to be useful enough to keep around. That's bullshit, and you know it. Is it? When was the last time you introduced me as your business partner instead of your brother who handles the technical stuff? When was the last time a client asked to work specifically with me instead of just accepting me as part of the Marcus Henderson package?" He was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Like the quiet, reliable, eternally supportive Alex he'd known all his life had suddenly been replaced by a stranger. "I can't believe you're saying this," he said quietly. "I can't believe you think so little of what we've built together. Together, like we were equal partners instead of star and supporting cast." "What we built," I repeated. "Tell me, Marcus, what exactly did we build? Because from where I'm sitting, It looks like I built the systems, the processes, the client relationships, and the actual work product, while you built the reputation for taking credit for it." Darn, the silence that followed was so complete I could hear the air conditioning cycling on in the next room. "Get out," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What? Get out of my office. Get your things and get out." I stood up, feeling strangely calm. "Are you sure about this?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Because once I walk out that door, I'm not coming back. Not when you realize you don't actually know how to run this place without me. Not when the clients start asking where I went. Not when you figure out that all those brilliant strategies you've been presenting were mine from the beginning. Marcus's face had gone white, but his voice stayed steady. "Then I guess I'll have to figure it out, won't I?" I nodded and walked toward the door, then stopped with my hand on the handle. "For what it's worth, Marcus, I never wanted to compete with you. I just wanted to be recognized for what I contributed, but you couldn't even give me that." He didn't answer, just stared at his hands folded on the desk. I packed my things into a cardboard box. 15 years of work life reduced to a few personal items and a plant Janet had given me for my birthday. Walking past the cubicles where I'd spent countless hours solving problems and building something I thought we were creating together, I felt like I was leaving a funeral. Nobody said goodbye. They all knew better than to take sides in a family fight. Sarah Chen's offices were everything Henderson Associates wasn't. Sleek, modern, buzzing with the kind of energy that comes from rapid growth and unlimited possibility. When I walked into her conference room for our meeting, she was already there with 2 other people I didn't recognize. "Alex." She stood up and hugged me like we were old friends instead of former client and service provider. "I want you to meet David Kim and Jennifer Walsh. David runs digital strategy for the Apex Group, and Jen just launched her 3rd startup. I may have told them you were some kind of marketing wizard." I shook hands with both of them, trying to project confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Sarah might be exaggerating slightly." "She's not," David said. "That customer segmentation analysis you did for her spring campaign, we've been trying to reverse engineer it for months. And the viral coefficient optimization," Jen added. "I've never seen anything like it. My last marketing firm took 6 months to get half the results you guys delivered in 6 weeks." Sarah gestured for everyone to sit down. "Here's the thing, Alex. I didn't just call you here to offer you a job. I called you here to offer you a partnership." I must have looked confused because she laughed. "Remember that conversation we had about expanding services? About how Henderson Associates was too small to handle everything I wanted to do?" She made air quotes around the words, and I remembered Marcus using almost that exact phrase when he'd decided her account wasn't worth the effort. I remember. "Well, I've got 7 companies in my network now, and they're all growing fast. They need the kind of strategic marketing support you specialize in, but they need it from someone who understands how to scale rapidly without losing focus." She slid a folder across the table to me. "I'm proposing something I'm calling the Strategic Marketing Collective. You'd be the lead consultant, with equity participation in a management company that coordinates services across all 7 businesses. David and Jen would be your first associate partners, and we'd bring in specialists as needed." I opened the folder and felt my breath catch. The financial projections alone were more than I'd made in my best year at Henderson Associates. "This is incredibly generous, Sarah, but I should probably mention that I got fired yesterday." "I'm not sure I'm the best bet for something this big." David laughed. "You got fired? By who?" "My brother. He owns the company." Jennifer leaned forward. "Wait, Henderson Associates is a family business? I always assumed Henderson was just your business name." "Marcus Henderson is my brother. I'm Alex Henderson. We built the company together after college, but..." I trailed off, not sure how much to share. "But he got the credit and you did the work," Sarah said gently. "Alex, I've worked with dozens of marketing firms. I can tell the difference between a front man and the person who actually understands the business. You think I didn't know who was really behind those campaigns? You knew? Honey, your brother is charming, but he couldn't analyze customer data if his life depended on it." Every time I had a real question, you were the one with the answers." She gestured around the table. "Everyone here has worked with firms where the smooth talker gets the credit. What we want is to work directly with the person who gets the results." I looked at the three of them, these successful, intelligent business owners who were offering me something I'd never dared to imagine: respect, partnership, and the chance to build something that would be mine from the ground up. "I'm interested," I said. "Very interested. But I need to be upfront about something. If we do this, if we start taking clients and building something successful, it's going to put me in direct competition with my brother's company, with my family's company." Sarah shrugged. So that could get complicated." David was already pulling out his phone. "Alex, I've got 3 clients who need exactly what you do, and I've been putting them off for months because I couldn't find anyone good enough. If you're worried about competition, don't be. There's more demand than supply in this market." "Or besides," Jen added, "from what Sarah's told us about your former company, they were already leaving money on the table by not scaling up. You're not taking anything away from them. You're serving clients they didn't want anyway." It was a compelling argument, and as we spent the next 2 hours mapping out the structure of what would become Nexus Strategic, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: excitement about work that was truly mine. Working from my apartment was weird at first. I'd converted my spare bedroom into an office, but after 15 years of commuting to the same building, sitting at my kitchen counter with my laptop felt like playing hooky from school. The work itself, though, was intoxicating. David's first client was a B2B software company that had been struggling to break into the enterprise market. Their marketing was technically competent but completely generic, the kind of safe, boring approach that Marcus would have loved because it wouldn't offend anyone or take any real risks. I spent 3 days diving deep into their industry, their competitors, and most importantly, their potential customers. Then I did something I'd never been allowed to do at Henderson Associates. I called the client directly and asked if I could interview some of their sales prospects who hadn't converted. "You want to talk to the people who didn't buy from us?" the CEO asked, sounding confused. "Especially the people who didn't buy from you. I want to know what stopped them, what they were looking for that you didn't provide, and what it would take to change their minds." 6 interviews later, I had a completely different picture of their market than what their internal data suggested. The prospects weren't rejecting them because of price or features. They were rejecting them because the company felt too small, too risky, too much like a startup that might not be around in 2 years. The solution wasn't better features or lower prices. It was a complete repositioning that emphasized stability, longevity, and the kind of enterprise-grade reliability that only came from working with an established player. I built them a 6-month campaign around the theme Built to Last that showcased their 5-year client retention rate, highlighted their financial stability, and featured case studies of clients who had grown alongside them. Instead of trying to compete on innovation, we positioned them as the safe, reliable choice, the IBM of their particular niche. The campaign launched on a Tuesday. By Friday, they'd gotten more qualified leads than they typically saw in a month. David called me that evening, practically shouting into the phone. "Alex, what did you do?" "They want to triple their monthly retainer and expand into 3 new markets. They're talking about bringing you in for a quarterly strategy review and possibly equity participation." Equity participation. In my 2nd week of independent consulting, I was already being offered opportunities that had never been available to me at Henderson Associates. "It's just good research," I told him, but I couldn't keep the smile out of my voice. It's not just good research, it's brilliant strategy. And more importantly, it's the kind of work that gets results. That night, I allowed myself to think about Marcus for the first time since I'd left. I wondered if he was struggling yet, if he'd realized how much of the day-to-day client management I'd been handling. I wondered if any of their clients had asked where I'd gone. Then I stopped wondering and got back to work. "Alex Henderson? Oh my God, I've been trying to find you for weeks." The voice on the phone belonged to Tom Rodriguez, the marketing director at Pinnacle Industries. They'd been a Henderson Associates client for 3 years, and I'd personally managed their account for the last 18 months. Tom, hi, how did you get this number? Sarah Chen. I called her asking about that customer lifetime value analysis you did for us last year, and she mentioned you'd started your own firm. Alex, we need to talk. This was the call I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. The client who wanted to follow me instead of staying with Marcus. Tom, I appreciate that, but I should mention that there might be some complications. I used to work for Henderson Associates and... I know exactly who you used to work for, Tom interrupted. That's why I'm calling. We had a strategy meeting with Marcus last week and let's just say it didn't go well. My stomach dropped. What happened? He couldn't answer basic questions about our account. Couldn't explain the methodology behind the segmentation strategy we've been using. Couldn't even remember our current campaign themes. When I asked about quarterly projections, he said he'd have to check with his team and get back to me. I closed my eyes. Marcus had always relied on me to prep him for client meetings, to brief him on the details he needed to know. Without that support, he was flying blind. Tom, Alex, I don't know what happened between you and your brother, and frankly, I don't care. What I care about is results, and you're the one who's been delivering them. If you're taking on new clients, Pinnacle wants to be one of them. 3 days later, I had a signed contract with Pinnacle Industries worth more in 6 months than I'd made in salary the previous year. And Tom had been right. Marcus hadn't fought to keep them. According to Tom, he'd seemed almost relieved when they gave notice. That same week, Jennifer introduced me to the founder of a cryptocurrency startup who needed help positioning themselves for mainstream adoption. David referred a renewable energy company that was struggling to communicate their value proposition to enterprise customers. And Sarah mentioned my name to the CEO of a regional restaurant chain who wanted to expand nationally. I was booking more high-quality work in 3 weeks than Henderson Associates typically landed in 6 months. But the real breakthrough came when I got a call from Patricia Vance. Mr. Henderson, this is Patricia Vance from Meridian Industries. I hope you remember me. As if I could forget. The client Marcus had botched, the deal that had started our final argument. Of course, Ms. Vance. How can I help you? Well, that's an interesting story. We had a follow-up meeting scheduled with Henderson Associates this week to discuss possibly reviving our partnership. Your brother assured us that the issues from our previous discussions had been resolved. I didn't say anything, just waited for her to continue. The meeting was disappointing. It became clear that he didn't have a firm grasp on the strategic recommendations that had impressed us during your original presentation. When we asked for clarification on the implementation timeline you'd outlined, he seemed confused. My heart was beating faster, but I kept my voice neutral. I see. Mr. Henderson, Alex, I'm going to be direct. We were impressed with the work Henderson Associates presented, but it's become obvious that you were the person behind that work. We'd like to discuss having you handle our account independently. The Meridian account, the one Marcus had said would set them up for 5 years. The one that had fallen through because he couldn't execute on strategies he didn't understand. Ms. Vance, I'd be very interested in that conversation. Excellent. And Alex? We're not just talking about the original campaign. We've got 4 subsidiary companies that could use similar strategic support. If your initial work meets our expectations, we're looking at a potential long-term partnership worth significantly more than our original proposal. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment office for a long time, staring out the window at the city below. 4 weeks ago, I'd been the invisible half of Henderson Associates, the support staff, the one who made sure Marcus didn't screw anything up. Now I was building something that could be bigger than Henderson Associates had ever been. And Marcus had made it all possible by firing me. The call from Mom came on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing strategic plans for 3 different clients. Alex, honey, we need to talk. Hi, Mom. What's up? What's up, me young man? Marcus told me what you're doing. I leaned back in my chair, trying to decide how to handle this. Mom had always been protective of family harmony. the one who smoothed over conflicts and made sure everyone got along. She'd also always favoured Marcus, though she'd never admit it. "What am I doing?" according to Marcus. "You're stealing his clients. You're undermining the business your father built. You're being vindictive and petty because you got your feelings hurt." Each accusation hit like a small slap, but I found I wasn't as angry as I'd expected to be. Just tired. "Mum, have you talked to any of these clients Marcus thinks I stole?" "That's not the point. The point is, you're destroying your own family's business out of spite." "The point," I said, surprised by the firmness in my own voice, "is that I'm finally doing work that I can be proud of with clients who respect what I bring to the table. The fact that some of them used to work with Henderson Associates isn't my fault." "Alex, you're being selfish. Marcus is struggling. The business is having problems." "What kind of problems?" There was a long pause. "He didn't want me to tell you this, but they might have to let some people go. Maybe close the satellite office." Henderson Associates employed 12 people. The satellite office in the next city over handled overflow work and specialized accounts. If they were talking about closing it, that meant they were in real trouble. "Mum, when did these problems start?" Another pause. "Right after you left." "And did it occur to anyone that maybe the problems started because I was doing more work than anyone realized?" "Alex Henderson, don't you dare take that tone with me. Marcus is your brother, your family, and you're supposed to be helping him, not competing with him. I spent 15 years helping him. I spent 15 years making him look good, covering for his mistakes and pretending I was happy being invisible. And the thanks I got was being fired when he needed someone to blame for his failures." "He didn't fire you. He fired me, Mum. He told me to get out of his office and not come back." Those were his exact words. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I wondered if the call had been dropped. "I didn't know," she said finally, her voice much smaller than before. "Because he didn't tell you the truth. Just like he didn't tell his clients the truth about who was actually doing their work." "Alex, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. But I need you to understand something. I didn't leave to hurt Marcus or destroy the family business. I left because I was tired of being taken for granted by everyone, including my own family. And if Marcus is struggling now, maybe it's because he finally has to do his own work." After I hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the lights of the city. Part of me felt guilty about Mom's call, about the pain in her voice when she realized she didn't have the full story. But mostly, I felt something I'd never experienced before, complete confidence in my own worth. The news came through David, who'd heard it from Jennifer, who'd gotten it from a mutual contact in the industry. Henderson Associates had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. I was in Sarah's office when David called, putting together a presentation for a potential client, a tech startup that wanted to break into the healthcare market. When my phone rang, I almost didn't answer it. "Alex, you need to sit down." "I'm already sitting." "What's wrong?" "Henderson Associates is done. They filed bankruptcy yesterday." The words hit me like cold water. I'd known Marcus was struggling, but bankruptcy? Complete failure? Are you sure? "It's in the industry newsletter. Financial difficulties, client defections, inability to meet obligations, the whole thing." Sis Sarah was watching my face, and she must have seen something there because she gently took the presentation materials out of my hands and guided me to the couch in her office. "Alex, what is it?" "My brother's company just went under." She didn't say anything, just sat next to me and waited. I knew they were having problems, but I didn't think. Bankruptcy? What about the employees? What about Janet, who's worked there for 8 years? What about the clients who trusted them? David's voice came through the phone, which I'd apparently put on speaker without realizing it. "Alex, I'm sorry, man. I know this is complicated." "It's not complicated," I said, surprised by how clear my voice sounded. "It's just sad." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Mixed in with the sadness was something else. A sense of vindication so strong, it almost scared me. For 15 years, I'd been told that Marcus was the essential one, the irreplaceable leader, the face of the company. Now, 1 month after losing me, that company was dead. Sarah squeezed my hand. "Do you want to cancel today's meetings?" "No," I said, and meant it. "No, I want to work." 3 days later, my phone rang at 11 p.m. I was working late, putting finishing touches on the Meridian presentation, when I saw his name on the screen. I stared at it for 4 rings before answering. "Hello, Marcus." "Alex." His voice sounded hoarse, exhausted. I need to talk to you." "Okay. Not over the phone. Can you meet me somewhere, please?" There was something in that please that I'd never heard from my brother before. Humility, maybe, or desperation. Where? That coffee shop on 5th Street, the one where we used to go after Dad's doctor appointments. I remembered the place. We'd spent a lot of afternoons there during Dad's last year, sitting in uncomfortable silence while we tried to process the fact that we were losing the man who'd built everything we thought we knew about our lives. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Marcus was already waiting when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his hands wrapped around a coffee cup like he was trying to warm himself. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, and there was something defeated in the way he sat. Shoulders slumped, eyes focused on the table, instead of working the room the way he usually did. I ordered coffee and sat down across from him, waiting for him to speak first. "I fucked up," he said finally, not looking up. "I fucked up everything. Marcus, no, let me say this. Please." He raised his eyes to meet mine, and I was shocked to see tears there. I destroyed Dad's company. I destroyed 15 years of work. I destroyed people's livelihoods. And I did it because I was too proud and too stupid to admit that I needed you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just waited. I spent this last month trying to do everything myself. The client management, the strategy work, the presentations, all of it. And I couldn't. I couldn't do any of it well enough to matter. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what I realized? I realized that for 15 years, I've been taking credit for being good at a job I never actually learned how to do. "Marcus, I fired you because I was threatened by you. Because every time you opened your mouth in a meeting, I could see the clients thinking, why aren't we working with him instead? Because every time you solved a problem I couldn't even understand, I felt like the fraud I actually am." The coffee shop was nearly empty, just us and a couple of college students studying in the corner. The space felt too small for this conversation, too public for this kind of honesty. "You're not a fraud," I said, and realized I meant it. "You're good with people. You're good at building relationships, at making clients feel comfortable. That matters. But it's not enough, is it? Not without someone who can actually deliver on the promises I make." We sat in silence for a while, 2 brothers who'd spent their whole lives playing roles that had never quite fit either of us. "The bankruptcy," I said finally. "How bad is it?" "Everything's gone. The building, the equipment, the client list, even Dad's desk." His voice cracked on the last part. "I had to let everyone go with 2 weeks' notice." Janet cried. Actual tears, Alex. She's 53 years old and she cried because I couldn't keep her job safe. I thought about Janet, who'd been Dad's secretary and had stayed on to help us get established. Who'd remembered everyone's birthdays and brought homemade cookies to every company meeting. Who'd been like a second mother to both of us. "What will you do now?" Marcus shrugged. "I don't know. Look for a job, I guess. Maybe go back to school. Learn how to actually do something useful." He looked at me directly for the first time since I'd sat down. "What about you? I heard you're doing well." "I'm doing okay. Building something new." "I heard about Meridian and Pinnacle." There was no accusation in his voice, just a kind of weary acceptance. "I don't blame you, you know. They were always more your clients than mine anyway. Marcus, I didn't set out to... I know you didn't do any of this to hurt me. Hell, if our positions were reversed, I probably would have done worse." He managed a small, sad smile. "You always were the better person. That's not true. It is, though. You spent 15 years making me look good, and the one time I could have returned the favor, I fired you instead. He drained the last of his coffee and set the cup down with the careful precision of someone trying not to break things. I'm sorry, Alex, for all of it. For taking credit for your work, for never acknowledging what you contributed, for firing you when you finally stood up for yourself. I'm sorry. I'd imagined this moment so many times over the past month. Marcus admitting that he'd been wrong, acknowledging my contributions, recognizing that he'd treated me unfairly. In my imagination, it had always felt triumphant, vindicated, satisfying. In reality, it just felt sad. I'm sorry too, I said, about the company, about Dad's legacy, about everything. Dad's legacy isn't the company, Marcus said quietly. Dad's legacy is that he raised two sons who were smart enough and tough enough to build something from nothing. You're carrying that forward. I'm the one who let it die. Nexus Strategic had grown to 15 employees and was occupying an entire floor of a downtown office building. We'd landed 12 major clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies that had never worked with a firm our size before. The Meridian account alone had expanded to include all 4 of their subsidiary companies, exactly as Patricia Vance had promised. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Jennifer knocked on my office door. Alex, there's someone here to see you. Says he doesn't have an appointment, but he's hoping you can spare a few minutes. I looked up from my computer screen. Who is it? Marcus Henderson. I felt my stomach tighten, but I kept my voice level. Send him in. Marcus looked better than he had at the coffee shop 6 months earlier. He'd lost some weight, and there was something different about the way he carried himself. Less of the casual confidence I'd always envied, but more genuine somehow. Hi, Alex. Marcus. This is a surprise. He looked around my office. The floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern furniture, the wall of awards and client testimonials that had accumulated faster than I'd ever imagined possible. Nice place. Very... you. Thanks. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What brings you by? He sat down, and I could see him gathering his thoughts, trying to find the right words. I got a job, he said finally. That's great. Where? Pinnacle Industries. Tom Rodriguez offered me a position in their business development department. I blinked, surprised. Tom had never mentioned anything about hiring Marcus. He said you recommended me, Marcus continued. That stopped me cold. I what? He called you a few weeks ago, asking about my background, specifically about my people skills and my ability to build client relationships. Marcus smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked completely genuine. He said you told him I was one of the most naturally gifted relationship builders you'd ever worked with, and that any company would be lucky to have me in a client-facing role. I remembered the call now. Tom had mentioned that he was considering hiring someone for business development, someone who could help them expand their client base, and had asked if I knew anyone with strong interpersonal skills. Marcus's name had come out of my mouth before I'd really thought about it. I just answered his question honestly. You could have buried me. After everything I did to you, you could have told him I was incompetent, or difficult to work with, or any number of things that would have been at least partially true. Marcus leaned forward. Instead, you gave me a chance to start over. Everyone deserves a chance to start over. Not everyone gets one from the person they wronged most. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, 2 brothers who'd finally learned to see each other clearly. I have something else to tell you, Marcus said. Mom and Dad's house? You know we've been trying to decide what to do with it since Mom moved to the retirement community? I nodded. Our parents' house had been sitting empty for months, while Marcus and I had been too caught up in our own drama to deal with the practical details of their lives changing. I want you to have it. Marcus, that's not... It is necessary. Dad always intended for both of us to inherit equally, but with the bankruptcy... He shrugged. I don't have anything left to give you. But the house is paid off, and it's got all those memories of us learning to work together in Dad's office. It should go to the son who actually learned the lessons. I felt my throat tighten. The house where we'd grown up, where Dad had taught us both to love the work of building something meaningful, where I'd spent countless hours learning to turn raw data into insights that could change people's businesses. I can't take your inheritance, Marcus. It's not my inheritance anymore. It's my apology. He stood up and pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. The papers are already drawn up. All you have to do is sign them. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. What about you? Where will you go for holidays? For family dinners? Maybe you'll invite me sometimes, if I earn it. There was something so humble about the way he said it, so different from the entitled younger brother I'd grown up with, that I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, that would take time, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Marcus, yeah, I'm proud of you. For taking responsibility, for making changes, for doing the work to become someone better. His eyes filled with tears, and he looked away quickly. I'm proud of you too, Alex. I always was, even when I was too much of an asshole to say it. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, holding the envelope and thinking about the strange paths that had brought us both to this point. A year ago, I'd been the invisible half of Henderson Associates, convinced that I'd never be more than Marcus's supporting cast. Now I was running my own firm, working with clients who sought me out specifically, building something that was entirely mine. And Marcus, who'd spent his whole life coasting on charm and family connections, was starting over in an entry-level position, trying to prove himself through actual work rather than inherited advantage. Maybe this was what growing up really meant. Not just getting older, but finally becoming the people we were supposed to be all along. The industry newsletter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I almost missed the small item buried on page 3. Pinnacle Industries reports record growth in new client acquisition, crediting innovative business development strategies and what CEO Tom Rodriguez calls the most effective relationship-building approach we've ever implemented. The company's new business development manager, Marcus Henderson, has been instrumental in the expansion. I smiled and forwarded the article to Sarah with a note. Looks like everyone found their right place eventually. Her reply came back within minutes, including you. Speaking of which, are you ready for the big announcement? The big announcement. Next week, we'd be revealing that Nexus Strategic had been acquired by a major consulting firm, with me staying on as managing partner and the entire team keeping their positions. It was the kind of exit strategy that most consultants could only dream about: financial security, expanded resources, and complete creative control. But that wasn't what made me proudest. What made me proudest was the thank you card from Janet, who'd been hired as our office manager and had written, "For the first time in years, I feel like my work matters and is valued." It was the referrals from satisfied clients who trusted me enough to recommend their colleagues and friends. It was the team of brilliant, dedicated people who'd chosen to work with me because they believed in what we were building together. It was the phone call I'd gotten from Dad just before he died, when he'd said, "I always knew you had it in you to build something special, Alex. I just didn't know you'd have to leave us to do it." Most of all, it was the knowledge that I'd finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued, between supporting someone else's vision and creating my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Saw the announcement about the acquisition. Congratulations. Really happy for you." I typed back, "Thanks. Want to grab dinner this weekend? I've got some ideas for how Pinnacle could expand their service offerings that might be interesting." "I'd like that. And Alex?" "Yeah? Thanks for giving me the chance to earn my way back into your life. It means everything." I put the phone down and looked around my office. Our office, really, since it belonged to the whole team we'd built together. Outside the windows, the city stretched out below us, full of businesses that needed the kind of strategic thinking we specialized in, full of opportunities to make a real difference. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the supporting cast in someone else's story. I was the author of my own, and that made all the difference in the world.